Okay, we're live.
Okay, cool.
Design Transforms, a series where we invite a network of guests, colleagues, designers in to talk about the transformative agency of design, the transformative capacity of design from their position of experience. So tonight we're lucky to have Rohan Chhabra, who is a graduate of MA Industrial Design, a little bit before my time. My first meeting with Rohan was as an exhibition of work. I think it was called Philosophical Tools, where Rohan was showing a piece of his sort of critical and politically engaged practice that's sort of exploring concerns relating to endangered animals and sort of how you can use sort of fashion and accessory design in sort of address to this issue of concern and raise debate around it. I was taken by that work probably about 10 years ago. And tonight we're going to hear about this trajectory from MA Industrial Design into to working through Nike. Hear a little bit about this this practice engaging in engaging discourses of endangered species, up to sort of contemporary practice, looking at fashion design in the metaverse. So where you're designing for this space with a startup over in the States. So I'd like you all to welcome Rohan.
Hi everyone. Hello. Nice to be here. Thank you, Matt, for the introduction. I just want to start by saying like it's a complete honor to be here. You know, being a graduate from CSM from the MA Industrial Design course. You know, I had quite a journey till now, so I just want to go through what I've been through and what I've learned and the insights that I gained and how my practice basically transformed from one spot to the other. But in the journey, you'll realize the foundation that I built during my master's kind of still retain as an anchor for me. So I'm just gonna go right into my next slide. So the fact is that I never wanted to be a fashion designer. I always wanted to be an industrial designer, but I grew up in India, and there were not many schools back then when I was studying, and I ended up doing fashion design. And here you can actually see one of an example of my work, which was part of my bachelor's graduate degree. Where actually, you know, since I was not much of interest, I didn't have much interest in fashion, but I was very much interested in creating characters, creating narratives and stories. So I created my own characters, and the garments were depiction of those characters. So what finally ended up happening was that when I go to my next screen, you'll see that I actually ended up, you know, leaving fashion and study MA Industrial Design at CSM in 2008 to 2010, and I was really lucky that all the work that I did during my bachelor's, I was actually able to get a Royal Society of Arts and University of Arts London full scholarship to pursue my my master's, which was the best thing that happened. And following that, as you see in my next slide, this particular quote kind of stuck with me and became the very foundation and the definition of what I understand good design is, which is by Dunn and Raby. That good design today ensures that products embody an ethic. And it was this that kind of, you know, made me think about the fact that maybe I don't need to design new products. Maybe it's about designing thoughts and people's behaviors and values, and maybe questioning those things. So I kind of was deeply inspired by this phrase, which actually led to my final master's thesis project, which was also called Embodying Ethics, which you see on my next slide. Just a visual here from one of the exhibitions that was curated by the Craft Council UK. And it was part of a series which was a traveling exhibition which traveled across UK. And this image was one of the visitors looking at this ram's head, which has been made in textiles. So as I mentioned that, you know, my love for fashion was not really there, but what I really learned from fashion was construction, tailoring, and being able to handle textiles, you know, and pattern making. So those are the things that really actually interested me. And so what you're looking at right now is actually a hunting jacket. The hunting jacket transforms into an animal trophy. And in this case is the trophy of a hunted ram, which is also endangered. So what happened from this was that, you know, it kind of basically laid the foundation of how I practice my own personal work. And if you see on the next slide, here is a full preview of the jacket itself. So the jacket had a series of zips and buttons, and it was able to completely deconstruct and reconstruct itself into a ram's trophy, almost like a hunter trophy. So what I was trying to find was, you know, going back to my favorite quote, like good design should embody ethics, was the idea of, you know, the ethics embedded in a hunting jacket. So I took an archetype of a hunting jacket, which I actually stumbled upon while I was walking around V&A in the fashion section. And I looked at this really vintage hunting jacket, and that was the moment it struck me. The ethics of actually hunting as a sport really kind of crossed my mind. And I thought, okay, what about I can actually take the hunting jacket and transform it into a hunted animal? So what I was trying to do was the clothing here, the jacket, was an embodiment of the hunter himself. So it's the clothing, because it's so close to your body, kind of acts like a second layer. So what I was trying to communicate was the hunter became the hunted. So a part of the hunter actually saw himself on the wall as a trophy, as a decorative accessory, and basically that's what it was reduced to. So I wanted to kind of question the ethics of hunting as a sport here. And in the next slide, you'll see another product that was part of this embodying ethics series. Actually, I created around 4 products, but I'm just going to talk through 2 of them here, just because there's a lot of other stuff to cover. But this one was interesting because it was here. I took a basic leather pants, and these leather pants actually, again, completely deconstruct itself and drapes around in anatomically correct dimensions of a cow's leg. And this was, again, the idea of where actually stuff comes from. And in fashion, you know, things are glamorized in so many ways. Like you always see leather pants being worn by rock and roll stars, like and you know, like musicians. And so there's a lot of glamour associated with the products. We tend to sometimes forget where they actually come from. And here I just wanted to make that very vivid and very obvious. The fun part for me was to figure out the construction. And this is where I was really able to use my fashion design skills to be able to deconstruct and reconstruct it into a cow's leg, essentially. So again, this was part of the same series where I was kind of questioning the origins of objects. And maybe next slide. Weirdly, right after I graduated from Central St. Martin's, I actually got an offer to work at Nike, where I was actually, my work was displayed at the New Designers exhibition. And we had a few designers from Nike who were, visiting the exhibition in UK. And they really found the work intriguing, and my obsession with anatomy and construction, which kind of led me to Nike. And so I was based in Amsterdam, in the European headquarters, designing sportswear for Nike. And in the next slide, just wanted to show you an example of my approach, how it kind of evolved and changed from designing hunting jackets to sportswear. And in this case, what was a foundation that I built at CSM and during at my master's program was actually the idea of understanding and observing user behavior and taking those insights and those behaviors into a design feature. So in this case, I observed a lot of kids, teenagers, especially our Gen Zs, and our customer group was actually wearing the headphones over the hood. So I had the idea of actually creating these perforations on the hood, which would allow the headphones to go on top of the hood and allow your music to come in more easily and not obstruct your sound. So that kind of was the idea of like an observation converted into an insight, into a design feature for a hoodie, which was kind of cool for me to kind of apply in a commercial setting, which is often very much led by aesthetics and not by behavior. So I just wanted to show you that an example. And on the next slide, so at Nike, because it's such a commercial company, where of course innovation is one of the greatest assets of the company, I still felt very limited in terms of what I could make. So I had some crazy ideas of actually creating wings on a flight jacket, and the idea of kind of using flight and actually Air Jordan and developing it into a flight jacket, which was very tedious to construct for commercial reasons. Kind of made me think about doing something which I would be more passionate about, something which I really felt deeply involved in. And for that matter, after working for 2 years at Nike, I realized that my passion actually goes back to my thesis project, which was about actually saving endangered wildlife. So it's a subject that is very personal to me, and it affects me deeply in a way that I really empathize on the status of endangered animals in the world right now, and how hunting, poaching, deforestation, on all these other things have actually, really depleted the population of a lot of animals and plants. So if you go to my next screen, you'll see what I did was I quit Nike when everybody's kind of questioning why I kind of quit a job which had a good stable trajectory for me. But this project is kind of like was defining for me in terms of my my practice, and also my foundation that I actually built at CSM. So I kind of took the same idea of communicating the issue which was about hunting in this case of endangered animals, and especially keystone species like the rhino. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see an overview of all the endangered animals that I actually wanted to bring to notice. And I use some of the most popular animals here just because they have a cultural context which people really identify with. So these are some of the endangered animals that you probably already know about, like the tiger, the rhino, the antelope, and the saiga antelope, and the Asian elephant. Actually, both Asian and African elephants are endangered right now. And what I was trying to do again here was the idea of informing people about the issue of how these animals are endangered. And I did that in a more from an art perspective here. So on my next slide, you can actually see the rhino up close. So again here, this rhino is an African black rhino, which is critically endangered. There are very few of them left in the world, and they've been hunted for their horns and for ancient Chinese medicines or for other reasons, and which doesn't really have any proof that they work. But here you can actually see the mechanism of how it works. So the hunting jacket here drapes over a sculpture which is incomplete without the jacket, but all the parts of the jacket basically become modular and then drape back again to form all the features of the rhino, like the eyes, the ears, and the rest of the body. So here you can see the population of rhino has really declined in the last 40 years. And this is what I was trying to bring out again through these messages. So in the next slide, you can actually see the deconstruction of the jacket and how it basically goes on top of the rhino sculpture, which is incomplete without the jacket. And then it completes it, and the hunter becomes the hunted. So similarly, I explored other animals in this area, which was, of course, the tiger. The tiger has a different take on it because it doesn't really rely on a sculpture. So if you go on to the next slide, it actually drapes on a wall, like a pelt of a tiger on a wall. And these zips, they're about, like, I think 70 zips, which was fun to make. But they all zip off, and they expose the stripes of the tiger and how tiger is often hunted and put as a pelt on a wall as a hunted trophy. So again, I was trying to bring here the idea of how you know, the hunter feels you know, I wasn't trying to put fingers on the idea of hunting, but it was just the idea of creating an experience that moves from aesthetics to moral reflection. So on the next slide, here is another very critically endangered species, the mountain gorillas, found in the Congo in Africa. So these again have been mostly hunted for bushmeat, and here you can see on the next slide the jacket and the gorilla here. So the sculpture, you know, remains incomplete without the jacket. So the jacket basically drapes in a new way to form features of the face, like the nose, the mouth, and ears, and of course the hands. So it's almost like a metaphorical depiction of a gorilla which has been hunted. So on the next slide, you can again see the deconstruction of the jacket and how it basically drapes on the sculpture to create the mountain gorilla. So similarly, I'm just going to go through the other two ones fairly quickly. The Asian elephant, again, critically endangered. So yeah, right at the current rate, we have about 35,000 elephants being killed every year, according to which we should, if we go on the same rate, we will lose all the elephants in the next couple of decades, which is really sad. And for me, like this was deeply moving and really affected me. So it became, kind of my passion to do something about the issue. And I found fashion as a way to communicate this and inform people and make them aware of what's going on. Part of the process, which I actually, the thought process which I developed at CSM was Victor Papanak, who was an Italian radical designer back in the 60s and the 70s. And he wrote this book about green design where he described the process of transformation, which really sticks with me at this point. You will see again and again, it will come in my approach here. So first step is to inform, which was this project. The second step was to reform, which was to actually do actual action. So I actually created a batch production of these jackets, and these jackets were sold through art galleries and through different exhibitions, where 50% of the profits were going to Wildlife Federation and other organizations who are working on ground to help protect these species from poachers, hunters, deforestation, and all other reasons. So in a way, I felt like I was able to do two steps. And the third step is transform. Transform is when you can actually inspire other people to do the same, or, kind of challenge the industry to actually look into this as a subject matter. So yeah, so that was the Asian elephant, the Saiga antelope. Here you can see the sleeves of the jacket becomes the hooves of the animal. So, but when I zip it off, it actually becomes like a regular sleeve. So on the next slide, you can actually see the real jacket, and then the sleeves basically become a depiction of the antelope's legs. And I did a similar thing with the pants as well. And this species is not widely known, but we have pretty much lost 95% of them. So there are only 5% left in the world, which is depleting really fast, and they're all being hunted again for their meat, for their skin, and so on. And they're part of all the illegal wildlife trade. So see, my practice basically transformed from designing sportswear into actually activism and conservationism. So after I completed this project and I was able to sell most of my pieces, I actually went back to fashion because I was out of money. And at this moment, I started working for Ralph Lauren, and I moved to New York. And since then, I've been in New York for the last 7 to 8 years now. And at Ralph Lauren, I was again back in the game designing sportswear. And so on your next slide, I just want to go through some of the examples of work that I've been doing that I did at Ralph Lauren, which was also a really good experience for me in terms of the learnings I had, in terms of the things I learned about commerciality and textiles. And so it was a kind of a refresher to go back in the business and learn new skills. For example, I worked on the Beijing 2022 collection for the athletes. I was part of the team who was designing this, which was and the thing which was really cool about this, which you'll see on the next slide, is that we actually worked with a very interesting material here, which is called adaptive insulation. So you see the layer on your left, which is basically a very thin reactive layer, which when exposed to cold, basically inflates automatically. So when it inflates, it basically makes your jacket insulated without the need for insulation or polyfill or down. So as you can see on the right hand side, it's flat when it's warm, and it basically rises up when the temperature goes up. So this was a new technology that we developed and used it during the Beijing Olympics. And for the athletes. And if you see on the next slide, I was also involved in a lot of other sportswear projects, like US Open. So we were designing, clothes for the ball boys, for athletes, which was kind of taking in the aesthetics of Ralph Lauren, which was very bright and colorful and very preppy, and mixing them with the idea of performance. So I just want to show more of my sketches and more of my, exploration of anatomy, and rather than actually showing you the photo shoots of the products. So again, here I was working on some technical clothing as well for sailing. Just showing you the breadth of stuff that I had to go through while I created, and how my practice basically changed with time. So again, a sailing jacket here, technical jacket, completely waterproof, windproof. And then on the next slide, a bit more sailing stuff. Ralph Lauren does a lot of sailing utility jackets. So I had fun kind of creating all these cool silhouettes, and use a lot of my fashion skills and the ability to kind of think of complicated construction when it came to technical garments, which was all the help which and the experience I gained while I constructed very complicated technical hunting jackets. And on the next slide, yeah, just a couple of more slides just to show you some of the work that I did at Ralph Lauren. Just all very like fashion inspired, and I had to like change my perspective. I had to change my approach. I had to become more commercial, and I had to learn really fast on how to adapt and be able to, kind of create a lot of product in a very short time, which kind of came daunting on me again, where I kind of realized that maybe I actually want to go back to my roots again. So on the next slide, I actually pitched a project to Ralph Lauren, which was more of a Shark Tank project, which was internally in the company, and it was a part of an initiative called Design for Change. And I created a concept and a clothing which I was developing personally, prototyping. And this project is called Polo Aid. Polo, as of course Ralph Lauren Polo, and Aid stands for Animals in Danger. So this project actually won the competition, and let me show you what it was meant to do. Again, going back to my roots of masters and Victor Papanak here, the idea was to inform people about how animals are in danger. Of course, we need to reform so that we can actually create some, raise some, awareness around it, and then, of course, transform the industry. So then, keeping the same methodology, created a backpack here. Yeah, the backpack is actually in the shape of a plus sign, which is a metaphor of aid and help. And we created this backpack in like very sustainable materials from recycled nylon. And the idea was that it is part of a rescue kit. And whenever you purchase this item, you're actually contributing to a social cause. And in this case, it was about protecting endangered animals. So if you see on the next slide, we created a series of this. Oh, okay, yeah, we can go here. Here you can see how this this actually works on the app. So you basically purchase the backpack, but the consumer is informed about in this case it was about protecting sharks, and it kind of mentions about like what is threatening the existence of sharks and why they're endangered, and it was a collaboration with WWF, which I wanted to pitch actually, and eventually the sad news was that COVID hit, and this project couldn't fly after that. As even though I won the project, the next step was to actually commercially apply this project, but after COVID, a lot of things changed, and the company's priorities changed as well. So this project kind of, had a standstill at that point. So if you go on to the next slide. One of my ideas for this project was actually to engage the younger customer. And I wanted to do that by actually not physically creating the products, but digitally creating the products, more like skins for a game, like how you would have skins for Fortnite or, God of War or some of these very interesting and engaging games. So I wanted to create a game around saving endangered wildlife. So rather than creating physical product, I thought it'd be more sustainable to actually create digital products. And that kind of led me to discovering what blockchain is. And this is what I currently do now. So if I go on the next slide, you'll see that I currently work for a brand called Space Runners. And Space Runners is a fashion metaverse. What is a fashion metaverse is basically we're trying to create an ecosystem where brands, players, consumers, everyone can be in that space. And we basically revolutionize how people shop, how people, not only engage with physical products, but also with digital products. As our lives become more and more digital with every day, I definitely wanted to kind of see how, if a part of the consumption could go digital, even if it's by 5 to 10%, the amount of carbon footprint that we could reduce on the planet could be phenomenal. So I kind of got really interested in this area, and I thought maybe there's, for me, it was far more interesting to create products which people could own now. So unlike a regular gaming skin, like Fortnite or one of these things, you can't really own. But if you are set up on blockchain and if you're a Web3 brand, when the users actually buy your product, they actually own it. So you can sell it forward. You can actually make revenue out of it. You can. So it's a new way of economy. So what are we trying to do at Space Runners? So we are trying to create a future that will form new experiences. So an immersive experience that will create new interactions and for the brands to connect with the communities and to engage at a digital level. And the communities will be part of the creation and the curation process, enabling ownership and fostering an emotional connection with the digital products, which hasn't existed till now. So that's one of the challenges that we have that we're trying to bridge right now. On the next slide, the other thing that we're trying to inform is inclusion and diversity. So, the metaverse, as we stand right now, is something which is not very inclusive. So that's something that we really want to do, is to shift to a in-network state, which is not bound by nations, race, sex, or disability. So your wallet, as they call it, if you kind of log in from a Web3 interface, will be your passport. So it'll signify your community, your tribe, your values. So we're trying to build a diverse and inclusive community to create a sustainable future. And in the next one, so all the images that you're actually seeing here are part of the gaming experience that we are building at Space Runners. So players, people can log in, they can create their avatars. They will be part of a gaming experience which will be linked with your shopping experience. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to create a symbiotic relationship between fashion and technology. So we'll bridge the gap that exists right now, and the aim is to create an intuitive experience and accessibility of the digital fashion for everyone. So that is the aim, and the aim is to hopefully get people to buy more digital fashion than the physical fashion, because for sure, for a fact, we know that the carbon footprint from a digital product is 95% lesser than a physical product. So in a way, if we can reduce consumption on the physical side, it automatically becomes sustainable. So that's one of the reasons that kind of it became more and more evident for me. And then the other part is fashion will also reform self-expression. So the idea was, so a digital future of fashion that basically can enable not just about expressing yourself or exploring new identities, but it's also a space for personal discovery. So people can actually discover who they really are. They can have multiple different avatars and completely express themselves, which they might be bound by certain cultural conventions or stereotypes, which they won't be able to otherwise express themselves in the real world. So that's kind of another thing about the metaverse here. And on the next slide. So fashion will also reform co-creation. So part of the process that we're trying to build at Space Runners, for example, this is a snippet of a co-creation tool that we're trying to build. For example, if you own these Space Runner sneakers, you are able to completely customize it, change colors, add accessories, and basically make it your own, and be able to trade it forward and earn more revenue out of it, or be able to, or just keep it as for your digital avatar, a representation of yourself. So we are trying to enable a space where people can actually co-create in a new, interesting way, which they haven't done before. And on the next slide. So this other part, which is really important for me again, is fashion will reform a better world. So it's basically a shift in consumer behavior for a sustainable future. So reducing the carbon footprint produced, making informed choices and decisions to protect the environment. A part of the initiative as Space Runners that we have is the idea of solar punks. So solar punks is the opposite of cyberpunk and steampunk. Solar punk is the idea of a utopian future. So we really aim of using solar punk as an aesthetic and as a language to talk about a positive future, to do positive actions, and in a way to make a better world. So that's one of the aim. Then the other is that, the other part is about Web3, which is really big right now, and as a topic that we see a big potential in the future, that it'll transform the culture. And as you all know, that fashion dictates the cultural capital, and the Web3 fashion will have the power to influence real life fashion. So we aim to create digital archetypes of fashion that will inform the fashion of tomorrow. So not only your digital fashion, but it will also influence your physical items in the future. So that's one of the predictions that we see. And also Web3 will transform the economy. So as we know that the world transitions from an economy which is based on mostly materialism to a more dynamic digital ecosystem that will create sovereignty and ownership of digital assets to individuals. And in the future, the hope is interoperability of these assets will be seamless, a seamless experience basically, and enabling people to a where to earn economy, where people will be able to, play games and actually make money. And so that's a different thought process to how I was growing up when I was playing video games. My mom would always find it a waste of time, but I think as things change, gaming industry as it's becoming bigger and bigger, people are finding ways of actually and being able to entertain themselves, but also to be able to create a living out of it. And in the next slide, so it's about, Web3 will also transform the new generation. So this technology, basically, I feel like is going to inspire the new generation to harness the power of Web3 to move fashion towards a future that is more considered, skillful, and positive. So that is our aim, and that is the solar punk attitude that we have, that we want to like bring across. And again, if we are able to execute this, all the causes that I've been very passionate about, especially saving endangered wildlife or climate change, those things can be addressed through the metaverse and through this digital platform. And, and hopefully we can actually make real life changes as well, and not just in a digital phase. And in the next slide, so Space Runners is not, it's also about having fun, and it's about like creating interesting fashion. And, we have an interesting methodology at Space Runners, because when you're designing real sneakers, you're always trying to address a problem to solve, whether it's your climate, are you making it for rainy weather, does it need to be waterproof, or does it need to be protect you from snow, etc. But in a digital environment, you have none of those factors. So how do we design something? So what we did is we actually created our own problems. So designing here kind of branches into two ways. So we become an artist first, where we kind of create our own problems. So in this case, it was the idea of space, and this collection is called the Nebula collection, and where we were kind of imagining the players to be in a alien environment, and for them to be able to move in that environment where there's zero gravity, and etc. So we kind of created these interesting new features which would allow people to levitate or to fly around, and so we kind of first found our problems, and then as a designer we tried to solve them in the most interesting and fun way we could. So that's how we kind of are approaching designing for the metaverse. And the next slide. Yeah, just a snippet of some of the cool stuff that we're doing, sneakers for the digital world. So of course they are very, very fun, and things that you can't really do with physical products, we are able to do in the digital space. And on the next slide. So this is actually super fresh. I hope this plays. Let's just wait for a second. Okay, it's a bit slow while it does that. This is a new collaboration that we just announced with Balmain. Balmain is a French luxury fashion brand, and they have this very iconic sneaker called the Unicorn. So it's one of our first fashion collaboration where we are actually bringing Balmain to the Space Runners metaverse, and we created their first NFT collection of digital sneakers, very limited amount, and these unicorns, of course, all have their own special features that you can't find in the physical world. And how we are doing it, we are actually linking it with the physical product. So when you actually buy the physical, the NFT is part of the purchase. So you have a digital one for your avatar, and or as an investment, and also more than that, it's the utilities that it comes with. Special utilities that only holders of this digital asset and this NFT will be able to utilize. So that's a new collaboration that is just going to come out. So I'm super excited about this, and you're going to see more on this very soon on social media and everywhere. So yeah, and lastly, I just wanted to show you. Oh yeah, maybe now it plays. Cool. So yeah, the last slide I have here is actually just an example of what a shopping experience could look like in a gamified way, where we have players who curate these looks and they get to be part of the fashion show, where people can actually purchase these items. So these items can be physical or digital or phygital, as you say it. So when it plays, you can actually see how the experience has changed of buying stuff on a regular website, on a Web 2 experience, to a Web 3 experience where everything is more digital and everything is, you can actually see it on your own avatar. Cool. So that was it from my end. That was my last slide. So I open up for any questions or anything from anyone. Matt, I can't hear you though. You're on mute, I believe.
I was on mute, yeah. You hear me now?
Yes, I can, yes.
Okay. So I asked the audience in the room if there's any questions, and there is one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, you sort of mentioned a bit about how sort of the digital fashion is more sustainable than sort of traditional fashion practices and things like that. Can you talk a bit more about how kind of maybe you look at sustainability as well as kind of some issues with sort of carbon emissions and blockchain and things like that? So sort of how you see the digital age becoming sort of a bit more sustainable.
Did you put that up?
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting to look, if you actually think about fashion, fashion has known that they've been unsustainable for, I would say, 20, 30 years, and more aggressively in the last 15 years. And in the last 15 years, the amount of progress that fashion has done is actually pretty less compared to what they should have done. And until this point, they still remain one of the biggest polluters on the planet as an industry. And if you look at blockchain, it's only like what, 2-3 years old on a commercial level, and what they have done going to proof of stake recently, they have already reduced their carbon emission immensely. And as this technology, which is basically developing at the speed of light, it will become even more and more sustainable. So as a future perspective, I definitely see the potential of this technology scaling and things becoming more and more sustainable.
Is Space Runners looking at things like the weight of data? So there's the sort of there's the mythology that sort of the digital is like carbon free. I mean, it does have data, does have material. The servers, sort of the energy costs and doing them, the mining of materials in order to sort of like produce those servers. Is that something that as a company, you're sort of looking at and considering following into your agenda?
Yeah, I think those are things are all important to look at, but it's part of how technology basically develops, and what we aim to do is adapt it, at the forefront and not wait for it. So that's the aim. But if you actually kind of compare it with a physical product, especially a fashion product, the difference is massive, because of the amount of water it actually takes to dye one t-shirt, or to create cotton, or to basically grow so much cotton that you have to, uh, you know, cut so many forests, or to develop any leather product, the amount of land that you need for herds and of cows. It's just like on a holistic level, if you kind of compare apples to apples, the comparison of digital to physical becomes pretty, pretty big. But to your point, you're right. There is a lot of improvement that needs to be done, even on the data side, on on that perspective. So the hope is that in the next coming years, things will become more seamless, and things should become more and more sustainable. I can't answer exactly what is going to happen, but I do know from inside information that there's a lot of work that is being done on the sustainability front as well.
And do you feel that, like in a sort of in a web 1.0, 2.0, or industrial design sort of circa 1950 to 1990 sort of way, we talk about disruptive innovation or disruptive innovators. Do you feel that there's sort of this turn in three and the potential that sort of, the digital, the sort of the NFT aligned with the material world? Do you see this as a disruptive innovation? And do you see that this disruption's required to actually change markets like fashion and the way that we consume fashion?
Yeah, I think so, because how I look at it is in this way. I feel like, we are like around 7 billion people right now in the world. So I guess by 2050, we will be around 10 billion people. Most of the jobs will be taken away by AI, right? And so you will have like this big population, which will be unemployed. So how I see this playing out in the future is almost like an upside down economy, where it will kind of create, an economy for people to find jobs and to find work in the metaverse, and kind of create and kind of maintain the balance that we need for the economy. And in terms of sorry, I was coming back to your question. Can you repeat your question again?
No, I was just asking about the sort of the disruptive nature of the business, like if it's this disruption is required in order to significantly change the way that we're consuming in fashion, for example, at the moment.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like I feel like if it grows to scale and in a way that is done mindfully and in a considered way, I feel like there is a massive opportunity. I mean, look at our phones right now. I mean, the amount of usage that we have, we are living digital lives. And so as we go into the future, I feel like the digital life is only going to go bigger and bigger. And it's something that I don't really want, but I feel like it is just the way things are. So I almost see it, you can say it as it's a necessary evil, but it's more necessary than it is evil. And it is our responsibility as we build this environment and this Web3 space that we do it in a more responsible way, in a way that, in a more humane way.
The question.
What I really liked at the beginning of your talk, the transformations you made in your fashion items, or maybe they're not fashion items, but clothing to sculpture. And you talked later about the digital world and how you transform objects, and people can transform themselves, or they can by themselves transform the objects or non-objects that they buy. Have you thought about doing that for physical fashion? Because fashion remains disposable to a very large extent, and we will need physical fashion, however much we would love to live in a digital world. We need to keep warm and protect ourselves. Have you thought of combining those two ideas of fashion, which is bought, could be transformed rather than replaced, transformed through small changes that you advise people to do, or replace worn out parts of that fashion, so the same garment could be transformed again and again and again through your inspiration or design, rather than necessarily changed?
Yeah, no, that's a very, very good question, and a very good answer as well. Like, you already had the answer for that. I truly think there is a big potential if we are able to design something that can actually grow with you, and that, you know, something that as kids kind of grow, if the garment can grow with you and change and evolve, that would be pretty awesome. But I'm not sure if we have been able to design that yet. But how I see, there are two ways of looking at it, you know, because you're talking about sustainability in fashion. And one is that you know, that I see fashion as or not just fashion, as just as product. I feel like we kind of reached a stage where we have actually designed so much product that I don't think I want to design more product. I almost want to design people's thoughts, people's values, people's behavior, people, you know, developing new rituals, more sustainable rituals. And a part of it is actually, you know, we're talking about value proposition, where I feel like value can be changed if we ask the right questions, and if we actually make people think about how much products do they really need, how much overconsumption do they really do. So part of the games that we're actually developing at Space Runners is to kind of question that, where is the idea of kind of keeping it very fun and light, but at the same time we're asking these really crafted questions about overconsumption of fashion, but then kind of linking it to a very fun experience. So it's I wish I could show you visuals of this, but it's things that we are developing right now at Space Runners, and all these gaming experiences will be part of the shopping experience as well, of you know, purchasing digital product, or if you choose to buy a physical product. But in the end, what we're trying to do is we're trying to change people's mindset through these experiences. So that's kind of a more psychological approach to sustainability that we're trying to you know, trying to encounter. So we're focusing on the narrative of consumption more than the narrative of production, which generally physical fashion relates back to.
But it's an interesting arc, I think. So, you know, if you track sort of discourse and practices of user-centeredness through then practice-orientated design practice, through to meaning sort of orientated design practice, and I think then, and there's lots of talk around people's sort of planet-centered design, or more than human, or plurality orientated design processes. A sort of, there is now a real turn towards value orientated design practice. There's a PhD candidate at Central St Martin's who's from a fashion background, that's developing a concept that she termed, her name's Nora Hagen, and she's developing a concept called of incentive aesthetics. So if we can sort of really understand value relative to incentive, and then have that inform the aesthetics that we, and not an aesthetics just in how something looks, but the sort of the experience of something into objects, then maybe we can sort of move towards more sustainable modes of consumption. And it's interesting what you've shown today, because it's actually landed a few things for me, because she's very much interested in luxury fashion. She's interested in sort of the Web3 sort of movement in order to orientate this. But I think it's a sort of a, yeah, you know, how do we teach value orientated design practice?
No, 100%. Yeah, I would love to actually connect with that PhD candidate. Yeah, it's a similar thought process, like you just nailed it actually, where we definitely feel we can actually, you know, I use the term solar punk, which is almost like a new term for sustainability, which is a lighter term for sustainability, you know, because a lot of the audience often get confused about what really sustainability entails to fashion, and you know, there's a lot of greenwashing that is involved in that dialogue. So, you know, we're trying to use solar punk as an adjective, as a movement, and as
personification of an idea.
Yeah, exactly. Personification of an idea, and kind of used as a metaphor to really approach this situation in multiple ways, where we still want to keep it fun because it's a game, right? It's still shopping, it's still fashion, so it's all about having fun. But at the same time, there's an underlying narrative that we want to tell, which will affect your subconscious and in a way make you think about your consumption and make you think about, do we really need to buy a new jacket, you know, or vice versa. Yeah.
Are there any more questions from the audience? No. I've got one last sort of thought or comment, or I don't know, something just that struck me, and it's not about where you are now, but it's about carrying this ethic. Mm-hmm. And what I think is interesting is how you sort of, from that modeling, or sort of that sort of like framing this position in design through your MA, and then sort of developing that out of your MA through various commercial practices, and sort of like returning to this sort of ideal through the practice. It's kind of interesting. And what I'm interested in is how it's danced across sort of disciplinary frames. So we've seen it in the sort of the academy critical design space, then it sort of moved into social enterprise through the WWF collaboration, and then sort of like, you know, taking it into Ralph Lauren, and sort of like, and seeing how it sort of transformed and evolved into that space. I think that's an interesting case to see how your narrative has moved through, and that very particular sort of lens and agenda has moved across different disciplinary frames and modes of practice is a very interesting example of how these ideas that you have and this position that you establish in your educational space can sort of inform, evolve and guide as you sort of progress through a career into different frames. So yeah. A comment, really, not a question.
Yeah, no, I agree. I feel like I was so lucky to actually be part of this program. It was something that I couldn't really afford, and I was so lucky to get the scholarship to be able to study at St. Martin's and pursue the MA design course. We actually met tutors like Ralph Ball and Stephen Hayward. Stephen Hayward is a genius, by the way. It's just, you know, like, even he was my mentor for the project Endangered, which was something I did out of school. So he had nothing to do with it, but he actually mentored me while I developed this project at Nike, or, you know, while I was out of Nike. So I feel like really lucky to have met some awesome people who have actually shaped my values, my approach to design, and like definitely, you know, added a lot of insight to me on how design as a subject, you know, can be looked at, because I came from a very narrow perspective of fashion. And when I entered this space, like I had this so many different ways of applying the same knowledge, because every time what I was trying to do was I was using the skill sets I took from fashion, but I was always applying a new methodology. Like it wasn't traditional fashion, but of course, you know, in my commercial experiences, I had to do what the brands wanted. But in my own practice, I really explored that area. So really thankful for that.
Thanks ever so much. Yeah, over there. Thank you ever so much. Okay.
Thanks, everyone.